Hey everyone, tonight we're drifting back, way back, to a time when the world was still young and full of wonders that we can only imagine now. Settle in under the covers. Let your head sink gently into the pillow, and dim the lights if they're still on. We're going to spend a long, slow evening together wandering through one of history's most famous mysteries, the lost island of Atlantis. No rush, no sudden storms. Just a gentle, meandering tale about a beautiful place that slipped beneath the waves one quiet day. Breathe in, hold for a moment, breathe out. Let the words float like soft waves lapping at an ancient shore. There's no need to remember anything. Just listen and let your mind drift alongside the story. The story begins, as so many good stories do, with a philosopher sitting in the shade of an olive tree in ancient Athens. His name was Plato, and he lived around 428 to 348 BCE. One warm afternoon, he began to tell his students about a conversation that had taken place many generations earlier between his ancestor Solon and an old priest in Egypt. The priest had smiled gently and said something extraordinary. "You Greeks are like children. You know nothing of the past." Then he spoke of a great island empire that had existed 9,000 years before their time, far to the west, beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He called it Atlantis. Plato described it carefully, almost lovingly. Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined. It had towering mountains that rose like silent guardians from the sea, their peaks capped with snow even in the warm seasons, and fertile plains that stretched out endlessly, green and golden under the sun. Rivers ran like liquid silver through the land, feeding lakes and watering fields where crops grew abundantly: wheat, barley, olives, figs, and fruits we can only guess at. The capital city was a marvel, built in concentric rings of water and land, like a series of moats around a central hill. These rings were connected by bridges wide enough for two chariots to pass side by side, and canals that allowed ships to sail right into the heart of the city. At the very center stood a magnificent temple to Poseidon, the god of the sea, covered in silver and gold, with ivory accents, orichalcum gleaming in the light, a metal that shone like fire, and precious stones embedded in the walls like stars in the night sky. The kings of Atlantis were wise at first. 10 kings descended from the sea god himself, who ruled justly and kept the laws written on a pillar of orichalcum in the temple. They met every 5 or 6 years in the temple to renew their oaths and sacrifice a bull to Poseidon, catching its blood in a golden bowl and drinking it as a pledge of loyalty. The people were strong and numerous, with armies of chariots and ships that dominated the seas. The land was rich with minerals, gold, silver, copper, and animals roamed freely: elephants, horses, cattle. The harbors were filled with ships from every corner of the known world, bringing spices, woods, jewels, and stories from distant lands. Life was prosperous, the air sweet with the scent of blooming orchards, the nights alive with the soft sounds of waves against the docks. Because, of course, it sounded perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. Plato tells us that the Atlanteans grew proud over time. Their power expanded across the seas. They began to conquer neighboring lands, building an empire that stretched from Europe to Africa. Their hearts became greedy, their decisions misguided. They turned from the gods, forgetting the humility that had once made them great. Zeus, watching from Olympus with his thunderbolt in hand, saw that this once noble race had become corrupt, their virtues eroded like cliffs by the sea. So one day, in a single terrible night and day, the island was shaken by earthquakes that rumbled from the depths and swallowed by the sea in a slow, inexorable pull. Atlantis vanished beneath the waves, and the ocean became unnavigable with mud and shallows where the great island had once stood, a reminder of what happens when harmony is lost. Plato wrote this in 2 dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. He never finished the second one. The story simply stops mid-sentence, as if the philosopher himself got lost in the telling. Many scholars believe Plato invented Atlantis as a moral lesson, an ideal society that fell because of hubris and excess, a warning to his fellow Athenians not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Others think there might be a kernel of truth hidden inside the tale, a faint echo of real events distorted through time like a whisper passed from ear to ear across generations. Perhaps he was remembering a real catastrophe that happened much closer to his own time, or blending several stories into one poetic whole. Let's drift a little further into that possibility. Around 1600 BCE, a massive volcanic eruption tore apart the island of Thera, modern Santorini, in the Aegean Sea. The explosion was one of the largest in recorded human history, rivaling Krakatoa or Tambora in later centuries. It sent a column of ash and pumice miles into the sky, darkening the sun for days and raining fine dust as far as Egypt and the Levant. Tsunamis raced across the Mediterranean at speeds we can barely imagine, smashing into the coast of Crete with waves taller than palaces, flooding harbors, toppling buildings, and drowning fields in salt. The powerful Minoan civilization, with its beautiful palaces at Knossos and Phaistos, frescoes of dolphins leaping and women gathering saffron, and peaceful trade networks that stretched to Egypt and the Levant, was badly weakened. The Minoans had no standing army, no fortified walls. They relied on their navy and the sea for protection, but the sea turned against them that day. Some archaeologists wonder if Plato, hearing stories passed down through Egyptian priests who traded with the Minoans, might have blended memories of this disaster with older legends to create Atlantis. The dates don't match exactly. 9,000 years before Plato would be around 9,600 BCE, far too early for Bronze Age civilizations. But perhaps numbers got stretched across centuries of telling and retelling, the way stories grow in the dark. The Minoans had advanced plumbing, multi-story buildings, vibrant art, and a seafaring empire. They disappeared suddenly, their palaces abandoned or burned, their people scattered. Could Thera's eruption be the earthquake and flood Plato described? Could the concentric rings of the capital be inspired by Thera's own caldera, a ring of islands formed by the volcano's collapse? Imagine that night on Thera. The ground trembled at first, a low rumble like thunder from below. People paused in their evening meals, looking at each other with mild concern. The animals grew restless, dogs whining, birds taking flight from the trees. Then the mountain began to smoke more heavily than usual, ash falling like gray snow on the rooftops. Fishermen in the harbors noticed the sea growing choppy, the water pulling back from the shore in an unnatural way. Women gathered children inside, closing shutters against the wind that suddenly howled. The sky darkened unnaturally, even though the sun hadn't fully set. Then came the roar, a sound so loud it shook bones and made ears ring. The volcano split open, spewing molten rock and gas. Houses collapsed under the weight of pumice. The air filled with choking dust. Those who could fled to boats, pushing off into the waves as the island trembled beneath them. The tsunamis followed, rolling in from the sea like walls of water, crashing over the cliffs and sweeping away everything in their path. On Crete, miles away, the waves hit the northern coast hardest, flooding the palaces, ruining the frescoes, burying gardens under sand and debris. Ships were lifted like toys and thrown against the rocks. Villages were erased. The survivors huddled on higher ground, watching the horizon glow red through the night. For days the sky stayed dark, crops failed under the ash, famine followed. The Minoan world, once so vibrant and peaceful, began to fade. Trade routes broke. Palaces were rebuilt smaller, less grand. Eventually, the Mycenaeans from the mainland moved in, and the old ways were lost. Let the image settle gently. A Minoan woman in a flounced skirt an open bodice, standing on a cliff at dusk, watching dark clouds gather over the volcano, her child clinging to her leg, the sea below beginning to stir uneasily. No panic yet, just a quiet moment before everything changed. The wind picks up, carrying the first scent of sulfur. She pulls her shawl tighter, whispers a prayer to the goddess, and turns back toward home. Back in Athens, centuries later, Plato's students listened carefully to his tale. One of them, Aristotle, later dismissed the story as fiction. He who invented it also destroyed it, he said dryly. But the tale refused to die. It drifted through the centuries like a leaf on a slow river, carried by scholars who copied the texts, pondered the details, and wondered if such a place could have existed. In the Middle Ages, monks in scriptoriums across Europe illuminated Plato's dialogues with gold leaf and vibrant inks, their quills scratching across vellum as they preserved the story. They wondered if Atlantis might have been a real place before the biblical flood, a lost paradise punished for sin. Some thought it was the Garden of Eden, hidden beneath the waves. Others placed it in the Atlantic Ocean, far to the west, a continent waiting to be rediscovered. Maps from the time began to show it, sometimes as a large island, sometimes as a chain of islands, always just beyond the known world, labeled with notes like "Here be Atlantis" or "Lost Empire of the Sea." Sailors whispered about it in taverns, dreaming of golden temples and treasures waiting for the brave. By the Renaissance, scholars argued over it again. Humanists like Marsilio Ficino translated Plato anew, debating whether Atlantis was allegory or history. Christopher Columbus carried a copy of Plato's description when he sailed west in 1492. He hoped to find Atlantis, or perhaps the mainland beyond it. When he reached the Caribbean, he thought he had found the edges of Asia, but later writers claimed he had stumbled upon the remains of the lost civilization. The islands, perhaps fragments of the great landmass that had sunk. Let's pause here for a moment. Breathe slowly. Feel your shoulders sink deeper into the bed. Imagine a quiet scholar in a candlelit room in 1492, turning the pages of an old book, tracing his finger along Plato's words while outside the wind whispers through olive trees. He dreams of golden temples beneath the sea, of waves that hide secrets. The candle flickers, casting shadows that dance like memories on the wall. He yawns, sets the book aside, and blows out the light. The room goes dark, and sleep comes easily. We'll keep drifting onward soon. The story of Atlantis is still unfolding, century by gentle century, like smoke rising from a small fire on a calm evening. Rest your eyes whenever you like. There's no hurry at all. The waves are soft, the night is kind. As Columbus' ships returned with tales of new lands, the legend of Atlantis grew new branches. Explorers like Amerigo Vespucci and Ferdinand Magellan searched the horizons for signs of the lost island. Maps of the New World began to incorporate Atlantis, sometimes placing it off the coast of Brazil, sometimes in the Caribbean, sometimes as the Americas themselves. Ignatius Donnelly, an American congressman in the 1880s, wrote Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, a book that argued Atlantis was real, the cradle of civilization, and its survivors had spread knowledge to Egypt, Mexico, and Peru. He pointed to similarities in pyramids, calendars, myths. The book became a bestseller, igniting a wave of interest that lasts to this day. But let's float to more recent times. In the 20th century, scientists began to look beneath the waves. Oceanographers mapped the sea floor, discovering the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a vast underwater mountain chain where tectonic plates pull apart. Some speculate that Atlantis could have been a landmass there, sunk by plate tectonics. Others point to the Azores or Canary Islands as remnants. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, claimed in trance readings that Atlantis was powered by crystals and destroyed by misuse of energy. His followers still search for halls of records under the Sphinx or in Bimini. Yet the most soothing thought is that Atlantis might not be lost at all. Perhaps it was always a story, a gentle reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile, that hubris invites the sea, that we should live in harmony with the gods and each other. Plato might have smiled at that. Let the waves carry us a little further. Breathe in the salt air. Feel the rock of the boat beneath you. Sleep is coming soon. And so the waves are softer now, the night deeper, the faint gleam on that submerged orichalcum fading gently into the blue as the fish glides away, leaving the temple in peaceful silence once more. Let it rest there. No need to pull it back. Your breathing is slow, isn't it? In, easy, out, letting every muscle soften a little more. The story is still with us, waiting like an old friend who knows there's no rush. We'll pick up right where the waves left us, drifting through more layers of the legend, century by unhurried century. Close your eyes if they're heavy. Sleep is welcome whenever it comes. As the Renaissance gave way to the age of exploration, the legend of Atlantis began to sail on new winds. Maps from the 16th century, drawn by cartographers like Gerardus Mercator and Abraham Ortelius, sometimes included faint outlines of a great western continent labeled Atlantis, placed tentatively in the vast, empty spaces of the Atlantic Ocean between Europe and the newly discovered Americas. These maps were works of art as much as science, engraved on copper plates, hand-colored with pigments of lapis lazuli for the seas and gold leaf for the compass roses. Sailors, returning from voyages to the Canary Islands or the Azores, told tales of strange ruins seen beneath clear waters or mysterious stone roads leading into the sea. Were these real, or just the tricks of light on waves, the mind playing games after months at sea? No one knew for sure, but the story spread in port taverns from Lisbon to London, whispered over mugs of rum and pipe smoke, the air thick with the scent of tar and salt. Explorers like John Cabot, who sailed for England in 1497, and Vasco da Gama, rounding Africa for Portugal in 1498, carried Plato's words in their minds, wondering if the lands they sought might be the remnants of that ancient empire, or perhaps gateways to it. In the 17th century, as European powers colonized the New World, Atlantis became a symbol for something lost and perfect, a mirror for the ambitions and fears of the colonizers themselves. Francis Bacon, the English philosopher and statesman, wrote New Atlantis in 1627, a utopian story about a fictional island called Ben Salem, hidden in the Pacific where science and harmony reigned supreme. Bacon drew directly from Plato, imagining a society of wise scholars who had escaped the old Atlantis fall and built a new world of knowledge, invention, and peace. His book described colleges where experiments were conducted with light, sound, and plants, where diseases were cured and life extended. Bacon used the tale to advocate for empirical science, a great instauration of knowledge. His work inspired real scientists and dreamers alike, leading to the founding of the Royal Society in 1660, where members like Robert Boyle and Isaac Newton pursued the kind of methodical inquiry Bacon had envisioned. Meanwhile, in Sweden, Olaus Rudbeck published Atlantica in the 1670s, a massive 4-volume work arguing that Atlantis was actually Scandinavia, Sweden specifically, with Uppsala as the capital and the Nordic gods as its kings. Rudbeck pointed to ancient runes carved on stones, myths of Odin and Thor, and the northern landscape's fjords and mountains as proof. It was a stretch, of course, born of national pride in an era when Sweden was a great power, but Rudbeck's work filled libraries, detailing how Atlantean survivors had brought civilization to the north, influencing everything from Greek myths to Egyptian hieroglyphs. Readers pored over his intricate maps, tracing rivers and coasts that supposedly match Plato's descriptions, debating in coffee houses whether the cold Baltic could really hide such warm secrets. Let's imagine one of those readers, a quiet scholar in a Stockholm library during a long winter evening, snow falling softly outside the frosted window, turning the pages of Rudbeck's tome by the light of a tallow candle. The room is warm from a tiled stove in the corner, the air scented with old leather bindings and the faint smokiness of the wick. He pauses at a drawing of a ringed city overlaid on a Swedish fjord, smiles faintly, and wonders if the legends could be true. The candle flickers, casting long shadows across the vellum. His eyes grow heavy as the text blurs. Sleep comes as gently as the snow blanketing the world outside. Drifting into the 18th century, Atlantis found new life in Enlightenment salons across Europe, where philosophers and intellectuals gathered in elegant rooms with high ceilings and crystal chandeliers to discuss reason, nature, and the mysteries of the past. Thinkers like Voltaire mocked the story as mere fable, a philosophical invention by Plato to illustrate moral decay. But others, like the Comte de Buffon in France, speculated on geological catastrophes that could sink entire continents, drawing on new ideas about Earth's history. Buffon's Natural History, 1749 to 1788, described epochs of cooling and flooding, suggesting lands like Atlantis could have existed and vanished through natural processes rather than divine wrath. In Germany, Johann Gottfried Herder pondered Atlantis as part of human folklore, a universal myth of golden ages lost. The idea fascinated because it fit the era's optimism about progress. Atlantis as a reminder that civilizations rise and fall, but knowledge endures. By the late 18th century, as revolutions shook France and America, Atlantis became a metaphor for fallen empires and new beginnings. Thomas Jefferson, drafting the Declaration of Independence, kept Plato on his shelves and wondered about ancient republics. In 1786, Jean-Sylvain Bailly, a French astronomer, proposed that Atlantis was in the Arctic, near Spitsbergen, where a once warm climate allowed an advanced civilization before a sudden ice age buried it under glaciers. Bailey's theory drew on astronomy, comet impacts, shifting poles, and mythology, Hyperborean legends of a northern paradise. His book, Lettres sur l'Atlantide de Platon, was discussed in academies, with elegant illustrations of icy landscapes hiding golden ruins beneath frozen seas. Readers in Paris salons debated it over tea, the fire crackling softly, the world outside alive with revolutionary whispers. The 19th century saw Atlantis explode into popular culture as archaeology became a science and empires raced to uncover the past. Heinrich Schliemann, who discovered Troy in the 1870s by treating Homer as history, believed Plato's story and planned to search for Atlantis next. But he died in 1890 before he could begin. Instead, amateurs and adventurers took up the quest. Ignatius Donnelly's Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, 1882, became the Bible for Atlantis enthusiasts. Donnelly, a Minnesota congressman and polymath, argued that Atlantis was the source of all civilization, its refugees teaching pyramid building to Egyptians and Mayans, the alphabet to Phoenicians, gods to Greeks and Hindus. He cited linguistic similarities, words for mother sounding alike across languages, architectural parallels, step pyramids in Mexico and Egypt, and myths of great floods worldwide. His book was meticulous in its way, with charts comparing calendars, zodiacs, and alphabets, maps reconstructing the Atlantean continent, and quotes from Plato woven throughout. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies, inspiring clubs and societies dedicated to finding the lost continent from Boston to Berlin. Let the scene unfold slowly. A Victorian gentleman in a velvet smoking jacket, seated in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books and curios from distant lands, poring over Donnelly's volume by the light of a green-shaded lamp. Outside, London fog presses against the window, muffling the clop of horse hooves on cobblestones. He traces a finger along a map of the Atlantic, marking spots where Atlantis might lie with a pencil. His pipe's smoke curls upward, mingling with the room shadows. The clock on the mantel ticks softly, measuring the hours. His eyelids droop as the text blurs into dreams of golden cities. Sleep steals in, quiet as the fog. Donnelly's influence spread far. In Russia, Helena Blavatsky incorporated Atlantis into theosophy, describing it as the home of the third root race in The Secret Doctrine, 1888, a mystical continent where psychic powers flourished before sinking due to black magic. Her work blended Plato with Eastern mysticism, inspiring Rudolf Steiner and the anthroposophical movement. In Germany, Atlantis fueled pseudo-historical theories that later twisted into Aryan myths. But for most, it remained a romantic dream, a lost paradise of harmony and advancement. As the century turned, fiction writers wove Atlantis into novels. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1870, has Captain Nemo showing Aronnax the ruins of Atlantis deep beneath the ocean, colossal columns covered in seaweed, statues staring blankly through the water, illuminated by the Nautilus' electric lights. Verne blended Plato's description with scientific speculation, imagining a sunken continent where advanced people once lived, their knowledge lost, but perhaps recoverable. The book captured imaginations, inspiring generations to peer into the depths with wonder. H.G. Wells touched on similar themes in The Sleeper Awakes, 1910, with lost civilizations echoing Atlantis' fall through misuse of power. Edgar Rice Burroughs created entire series around lost worlds. At the Earth's Core, 1914, The Land That Time Forgot, 1918, where Atlantis-like societies survived underground or on hidden islands, complete with dinosaurs, advanced tech, and moral lessons. Drift into one of those tales, a reader in a cozy armchair by a coal fire, turning pages as Nemo's voice describes the vast plain, an ocean of death, where Atlantis lies buried. Rain patters on the window. The fire pops softly. Eyelids grow heavy with the rhythm of the words. The early 20th century brought wars that paused many searches, but the legend endured in quieter corners. In 1911, Paul Schliemann, grandson of Heinrich, discoverer of Troy, claimed to have found Atlantean artifacts in his grandfather's estate, including an owl-headed vase inscribed from King Kronos of Atlantis, and a bronze plate with Phoenician script. He published in newspapers, sparking excitement. It was a hoax, revealed when experts examined the items, but the story sold papers and kept the dream alive. In the 1920s, Lewis Spence, a Scottish folklorist, published The Problem of Atlantis, 1924, arguing for a North Atlantic location based on geology, Basque language roots, and Celtic myths. He suggested Atlantis was a bridge between Europe and America, sunk around 10,000 BCE, its survivors carrying culture eastward. Spence's work was scholarly, with footnotes and bibliographies, appealing to academics and enthusiasts alike. Then came Edgar Cayce, the Kentucky clairvoyant who gave over 14,000 psychic readings from 1901 to 1945 while in self-induced trance. From the 1920s onward, he spoke extensively of Atlantis as a real place with three major destructions. The first around 50,000 BCE from genetic experiments creating human-animal hybrids. The second in 28,000 BCE from misuse of power crystals causing massive explosions. And the final one in 10,000 BCE from geological shifts and energy overloads. Atlanteans had advanced technology, flying machines called vimanas, lasers for surgery, healing temples powered by crystals that harness solar and cosmic energy. Survivors fled to Egypt, building the Sphinx as a record hall, the Yucatan, influencing Mayans, and the Pyrenees, ancestors of Basques. Cayce predicted physical evidence would surface off the Bimini coast in 1968 to 69, including temples and roads. When divers discovered the Bimini Road in 1968, a 1,900-foot line of rectangular stones underwater. They thought it matched exactly. Geologists argue it's natural beach rock formation, but Casey's followers see an Atlantean highway, perhaps part of a crystal grid. His Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, founded in 1931, still offers courses, books, and retreats on Atlantis, blending spirituality with pseudohistory. Imagine a 1930s reading session in Casey's Virginia home. Casey lying on a couch in a simple room, eyes closed, voice steady and calm as he describes crystal-powered cities glowing under a tropical sun. Listeners leaning in with notebooks open, the air quiet except for the scratch of pencils. A fan whirs softly in the background. Outside, the world bustles with Depression-era worries, but here time slows, visions unfold like dreams. Post-World War II technology accelerated the hunt in ways previous generations could only imagine. In 1947, Norwegian ethnographer Thor Heyerdahl sailed the Kon-Tiki balsa raft from Peru to Polynesia, proving that ancient South Americans could have crossed the Pacific using prevailing currents, echoing Donnelly's ideas of Atlantean diffusion across oceans. Heyerdahl later explored Easter Island and the Galapagos, searching for links to lost civilizations. In the 1950s, deep-sea submersibles and sonar began mapping the ocean floor, revealing the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive underwater mountain chain where the Eurasian and American plates pull apart at a few centimeters per year. Some geologists speculated that Atlantis could have been a landmass along this ridge, subsided over millennia through tectonic activity rather than a sudden cataclysm. Expeditions funded by universities and private donors scanned the ridge for anomalies, finding hydrothermal vents and bizarre life forms, but no golden temples. In the 1960s, Greek archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos continued excavating Acrotiri on Santorini, uncovering more of the Minoan town preserved under volcanic ash like a time capsule. The site revealed multi-story houses with indoor plumbing, hot and cold running water from geothermal sources, and murals depicting ships sailing peaceful seas, women gathering saffron crocuses, and boxers in ritual combat. No human remains were found, suggesting residents had warning and fled before the final eruption, perhaps from earlier earthquakes. Marinatos called it the Pompeii of the prehistoric Aegean, arguing in interviews and papers that this was the basis for Plato's Atlantis, transmitted through Minoan refugees to Egypt and then to Solon. His work inspired a wave of books and documentaries, like J.V. Luce's The End of Atlantis, 1969, which detailed the eruption's timeline, initial tremors, ashfall, massive blast, caldera collapse, tsunamis devastating Crete 60 miles away. Drift into a 1960s dive off Santorini. Jacques Cousteau in a wetsuit descending through crystal blue water, bubbles rising lazily as his flashlight beam pierces the depths. Below, ash-covered walls emerge, fresco fragments of dolphins and lilies, pottery shards scattered on the seafloor. Fish dart through rooms where people once laughed and loved. The sea is calm, sunlight dappling the ruins in patterns like forgotten memories. Cousteau surfaces, removes his mask, and gazes at the caldera with quiet wonder. The 1970s saw pseudoscience and mysticism bloom amid counterculture interest in ancient wisdom. Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, 1968, suggested Atlanteans had extraterrestrial help, their crystals perhaps alien tech. Charles Berlitz's The Mystery of Atlantis, 1976, linked it to the Bermuda Triangle, claiming magnetic anomalies from sunken crystals caused ships to vanish. These books sold millions, fueling tours to Santorini and Bimini, where Atlantean crystals were sold as souvenirs. In academia, Christostomas took over Acrotiri digs after Marinatos' death, uncovering more evidence of Minoan trade. amber from the Baltic, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, showing a network that could inspire Plato's empire. Let the excavation unfold in detail. Workers in shorts and hats, trowels scraping layer by layer of pumice and ash, uncovering a wall painted with swallows in flight over a serene landscape. The sun beats down on the caldera rim. A gentle breeze carries the scent of sea salt and wild herbs. Doma stands by, eyes bright with discovery, noting the absence of weapons or fortifications. A peaceful people, much like Plato's early Atlanteans. The past whispers up from the ground, piece by fragile piece. The 1990s brought digital tools to the search. Satellite imagery from Landsat and early GPS mapped potential sites with precision. In 1981, a Soviet research vessel reported sonar contacts off Cuba resembling grid-like streets at 2,000 feet, dubbed the Cuban underwater city. Later analysis showed natural formations, but the story persisted in documentaries. In 1992, oceanographer Robert Ballard, fresh from finding the Titanic, led expeditions in the Mediterranean using side-scan sonar and ROVs, searching for Minoan shipwrecks that might confirm the tsunami's impact. He found no Atlantis, but his work advanced underwater archaeology. Computer models at universities simulated Thera's eruption in detail. Magma chamber pressure building over centuries, the blast equivalent to hundreds of atomic bombs, ash clouds circling the globe, tsunamis modeling wave heights up to 35 meters hitting Crete's north coast, explaining the sudden abandonment of palaces like Knossos. New Age movements in the 1990s revived Casey's visions. Books like The Destruction of Atlantis by Frank Joseph, 1998, mixed myth with pseudoscience, suggesting electromagnetic crystals caused the fall. Retreats in Sedona or Glastonbury offered Atlantean healing with quartz wands. Documentaries aired on History Channel, blending CGI reconstructions with expert interviews. Thera's caldera filling with water, waves crashing on Minoan shores. Into the 21st century, technology deepens the quest further. In 2009, Google Earth users spotted grid-like lines on the Atlantic sea floor off Africa, later explained as sonar data artifacts for mapping ships. In 2011, archaeologist Richard Freund used ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography in Spain's Diana National Park marshes, finding circular structures and canal remnants he called memorial cities built by Atlantean refugees fleeing the flood. Critics argue they're natural salt pans or later Roman ruins, but Freund's Nat Geo documentary, Finding Atlantis, drew millions. In 2018, Merlin Burroughs' company claimed high-resolution satellite photos revealed Atlantis in the Spanish Cadiz region, dried rings, and structures matching Plato. Independent experts debunked it as natural dunes and modern agriculture, but the hype generated books and tours. Documentaries like Atlantis Rising, 2017, by James Cameron used drones, submersibles, and 3D modeling to explore Thera, Bimini, Sardinia, neuralgic towers there suggested as Atlantean outposts. Genetic studies of ancient DNA show Minoan links to Anatolia and Europe, but no evidence of superrace. Underwater robots map the Black Sea floor for flooded Neolithic sites, echoing flood myths. Alternative theories abound. Some say Atlantis was in the Andes, Bolivia's Altiplano with ring-like Lake Titicaca and Tiwanaku ruins. Others point to Doggerland, a submerged land in the North Sea sunk 8,000 years ago after the Ice Age, home to Mesolithic hunters. Or Indonesia's Sundaland, a vast lowland flooded 12,000 years ago, potentially cradle of early agriculture. Each theory has grains of evidence, megaliths, flood legends, but none fit Plato perfectly. The gentlest view remains. Atlantis is a metaphor. Plato crafted it to critique Athens' imperialism after the Peloponnesian War, showing even great powers fall to hubris, or to idealize a society of justice and philosophy, lost to materialism. Critias, the unfinished dialogue, breaks off as Zeus prepares to speak. Perhaps Plato intended us to finish the story ourselves. Let that sink in softly. The legend comforts us, reminding civilizations rise and fall like tides, but stories endure forever. Like waves, they come and go, but the ocean remains calm and vast. The night is calm, the air still. Rest now. The story continues in dreams if you wish. The waves whisper. The legend endures. Rest now. Dreams await, if you're ready to let them come. But if the story still holds you gently in its current, let's drift onward from that quiet place where myth and memory blend like sea mist on a calm morning. The tale of Atlantis flows forward, weaving through the fabric of human curiosity, from dusty archives to digital screens, from whispered campfire stories to high-tech dives into the deep. Breathe in the fresh salt air. Hold it softly. Exhale. Let your limbs grow heavier, your thoughts lighter. We'll explore the ways the legend has shaped our world, one slow wave at a time. No hurry. The sea is all the time there is. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the quest for Atlantis evolved from armchair speculation and occasional expeditions to a high-tech, global pursuit that blended ancient texts with satellite imagery, submersibles, DNA analysis, and computer models. In the early 2000s, expeditions funded by organizations like National Geographic and private donors revisited Bimini in the Bahamas, where Edgar Cayce had predicted Atlantean ruins would emerge in the late 1960s. Divers equipped with side-scan sonar, remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, and underwater cameras mapped the seafloor in greater detail than ever before, finding additional sections of the Bimini Road, those intriguing lines of rectangular stones that appear laid like pavement to some observers and natural geological formations to others. Greg Little, a psychologist and dedicated Cayce enthusiast, led multiple dives between 2003 and 2004, recovering rock samples that he claimed showed tool marks, artificial arrangement, and even possible harbor structures nearby. Skeptics, including geologists from the U.S. Geological Survey, countered with detailed studies showing the rocks formed through natural beach processes, cracking evenly under pressure like giant tiles in a process called tessellation. The debate simmered quietly in academic journals, online forums, and conferences, with each side presenting data like pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit together perfectly, leaving room for wonder and doubt. Let the underwater scene play out slowly in your mind. A diver in a black wetsuit descending through turquoise water that fades to deeper blue, bubbles trailing upward like lazy thoughts rising to the surface. The ROV's lights sweep the bottom, illuminating the stone lines stretching into the gloom, seaweed swaying gently in the current. Fish dart away from the beam. The diver touches a block, feeling its rough surface through gloved fingers, wondering if human hands shaped it millennia ago, or if nature alone crafted this enigma. Bubbles rise in a steady stream. The surface shimmers far above, a distant world. In 2005, a team led by Swedish geologist Martin Jacobson used multi-beam sonar aboard the research vessel Odin to map sections of the North Atlantic seafloor, focusing on areas around the Azores, volcanic islands some believe are the surviving mountaintops of Atlantis. The data revealed stunning details: vast lava fields frozen in time, hydrothermal vents spewing hot mineral-rich water like underwater geysers, and deep trenches where the Earth's crust pulls apart. Jacobson's findings suggested that the ridge's volcanic activity could have inspired ancient flood myths, with eruptions and earthquakes causing local tsunamis, but not a literal sunken continent the size Plato described. Meanwhile, in Greece, Excavations at Akrotiri on Santorini continued under the direction of Christos Doma's successors, uncovering more frescoes that depicted everyday Minoan life. Ships with sails billowing in the wind, fishermen casting nets into calm seas, landscapes with winding rivers and snow-capped mountains that echoed Plato's descriptions of Atlantis' fertile plains and high peaks. A 2006 study published in Nature used advanced radiocarbon, dating on olive branches buried in the ash, to pinpoint Thera's eruption more precisely to between 1627 and 1600 BC, aligning closely with the archaeological evidence for the Minoan civilization's abrupt decline. The digital age brought new tools that made the search accessible to anyone with a computer. In 2009, when Google launched Google Ocean as an extension of Google Earth, it allowed ordinary people to dive into virtual depths from their living rooms. Users exploring the feature spotted grid-like lines on the Atlantic sea floor off the northwest coast of Africa at depths of around 3,000 meters. Straight roads crossing at right angles like a submerged city plan. Excitement spread rapidly online. Forums and social media buzzed with posts declaring Atlantis found and sharing screenshots. Google quickly explained it as artifacts from sonar data collection, overlapping ship tracks creating illusory lines, not ruins. But the viral moment reminded everyone how accessible the search had become. Armchair explorers could now zoom over digital seas, trace anomalies with mouse clicks, and debate in real time with strangers across the world. Let your mind wander through a modern living room at dusk. Someone in comfortable pajamas, laptop balanced on their lap, scrolling over the blue digital depths of Google Ocean, pausing at a strange formation, zooming in closer to examine the lines. The screen glows softly against the darkening room. Outside, night falls quietly, stars beginning to appear. Eyelids blink slower as the virtual waves rock the viewer into a gentle trance. In 2011, University of Hartford archaeologist Richard Freund made international headlines with a National Geographic special, Finding Atlantis, which documented his team's work using electrical resistivity tomography, ground-penetrating radar, and core sampling in Spain's Dinana National Park, a vast marshy delta near Cadiz that some believe was once a bay connected to the Atlantic. Freund found buried circular structures, canals, and what he interpreted as memorial mounds built by Atlantean refugees who fled the Thera eruption and settled in Iberia. He linked these to the semi-mythical culture of Tartessos, rich in metals and mentioned by Herodotus as a trading partner of the Phoenicians. Freund's team also dove the waters around the Azores, finding underwater lava caves and formations he speculated were artificial harbors or temples. Critics from the Spanish archaeological community dismissed the rings as natural salt domes or medieval fish traps, arguing the evidence was circumstantial at best, but the documentary drew millions of viewers, its high-production CGI recreations showing gleaming cities sinking in slow motion amid earthquakes and floods, narrated in a calm, captivating voice. The 2010s saw climate change add a new layer of urgency to Atlantis discussions. Rising sea levels threatened coastal archaeological sites worldwide. Some speculated that modern cities like Venice or Miami could become new Atlantises if global warming continued unchecked. In 2013, a study in PLOS-1 used advanced climate models to reconstruct ancient sea levels, suggesting that flooded continental shelves like Sahul, connecting Australia and New Guinea, or Beringia, linking Asia and America, during the end of the Ice Age could have inspired global flood myths, including Plato's Atlantis. These lands were home to human populations for thousands of years before being submerged around 10,000 to 8,000 BCE. Their coastlines erased as glaciers melted. In 2015, geophysicists from Columbia University used seismic wave data to image the Earth's mantle under the Atlantic, finding no evidence of a massive sunken continent, but confirming the slow spreading of the mid-Atlantic ridge, which could cause localized subsidence over geological time. Alternative theories flourished in the digital age. YouTube channels like Bright Insight and Ancient Architects gained millions of subscribers by proposing Atlantis in the Rikat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, a massive 25-mile wide circular formation in Mauritania visible from space. They cited Plato's descriptions of concentric rings, red, black, and white rocks, elephants, once in the region, and a central mountain, arguing it was a dried-up Atlantean capital flooded by a mega tsunami. Expeditions in 2018 used drones and ground surveys, but found no artifacts, just natural erosion from wind and water. Yet the videos continued to rack up views, with comment sections filled with debates and personal theories. In 2017, James Cameron's documentary, Atlantis Rising, aired on National Geographic, using state-of-the-art drones over Santorini's caldera, submersibles in the Mediterranean, and ancient DNA analysis to trace Minoan migrations after the eruption. Cameron, a seasoned deep-sea explorer who had dived to the Mariana Trench, led parts of the expedition himself, narrating how the Thera blast could have ended a Bronze Age superpower overnight. The film blended cutting-edge science, volcanic core samples, tsunami simulations, with interviews from mystics and historians, creating a balanced, soothing narrative that neither dismissed nor overhyped the legend. Let the dive unfold in your mind. Cameron sealed in a submersible pod, descending through layers of blue that darkened to black, spotlights piercing the void to reveal volcanic rock walls emerging like silent guardians from the abyss. Bubbles rise in a steady, hypnotic stream. The sub hums softly with machinery. He speaks in a microphone, voice calm and measured. This could be where it all began. The earthquake, the flood, the end of a world. The depths feel eternal, vast, untroubled by time. The 2020s bring AI and big data to the forefront of the search, transforming how we chase ancient mysteries. In 2021, a team at MIT developed a machine learning algorithm that analyzed Plato's text for geographic clues, cross-referencing with modern topography, linguistics, and archaeology to suggest possible locations in Morocco or Tunisia near ancient Carthage. The AI sifted through thousands of variables, outputting probability maps that highlighted coastal areas with ring-like features and mineral deposits matching orichalcum descriptions. In 2022, NASA's Earth Observing System satellite data was used to map underwater features off the coast of Ireland, sparking renewed Celtic Atlantis theories based on Irish myths of Tir na Nog, a sunken land of eternal youth. In 2023, a study published in Science Advances used deep-sea sediment cores from around the world to confirm that Thera's ash cloud reached as far as Greenland and China, proving the eruption's global climatic impact. Cooler temperatures, failed harvests, that could have contributed to broader societal collapses beyond Crete. Crowdsourced searches have thrived in the social media era. Subreddits like r/Atlantis and r/alternative history host discussions on LiDAR scans of the Amazon rainforest, revealing pre-Columbian circular earthworks that some claim match Atlantean designs. Podcasts like The Atlantis Puzzle and Lost Civilizations interview experts weekly, blending soothing narration with guest stories of dives and digs. In 2024, a viral TikTok series used AI-generated images to reconstruct Atlantis based on Plato, garnering billions of views and inspiring user-generated content. Yet amid the hype, the gentlest view remains. Atlantis is eternal because it's internal, a dream of harmony lost, a call to live better. Plato's utopia reminds us to seek justice, avoid greed, cherish balance. As seas rise today, the legend whispers a quiet warning. The waves are gentle, the night endless. Rest now, dreams of lost cities await. And so, The waves continue their eternal rhythm, rising and falling like soft thoughts in the mind, carrying stories older than any city, older than the oldest tree, older even than the mountains themselves. If you listen closely, they whisper the same story Plato first wrote in Timaeus and Critias, yet now it drifts through centuries, layered with discoveries, imaginings, misinterpretations, and dreams. Atlantis is no longer simply a vanished island, a ruined city beneath the waves. It has become a mirror, reflecting every human hope, every fear, every longing for a world both perfect and lost. Let your breathing slow. Feel it match the pulse of the ocean, a quiet and unbroken tide. Picture the horizon stretching beyond imagination, where water meets sky, and somewhere beneath that surface, if your mind allows, Atlantis still waits, its stones silent, its streets empty, its temples gleaming faintly beneath layers of silt and shadow. The early 21st century saw explorers and scholars turn their attention to places once thought impossible. In 2025, a joint expedition led by oceanographer Dr. Henning van der Meer used autonomous underwater vehicles to explore the Canary Abyss, a deep trench off the northwest African coast. Their mission was precise, almost surgical, laser mapping the seabed with centimeter-level accuracy, collecting sediment cores, and scanning for anomalies that might hint at human construction. The AUVs descended into darkness, lights piercing through cold blue water. For hours, the vehicles drifted over vast plains of sand, punctuated by scattered volcanic boulders, hydrothermal vents hissing faint clouds of mineral-rich steam, and the occasional shadow of a deep-sea fish gliding in silence. One particular scan revealed parallel lines stretching over 300 meters, faintly curving, as though they traced streets once walked by people long gone. Van der Meer leaned over the monitors on the ship's deck, her breath fogging the glass in the cold Atlantic wind, heart lifting with cautious excitement. Could this be another Bimini Road? Or simply the geometry of currents shaping rocks over millennia? The distinction did not matter in that moment. Curiosity itself was enough. Meanwhile, in the deserts of Mauritania, geologists and drone pilots returned to the Eye of the Sahara, the Rikat structure, where concentric rings of stone and sand have caught the imagination of Atlantean theorists for decades. This 25-mile-wide formation, visible from space, is a testament to the beauty of natural erosion. Yet as drones swooped over it, casting long shadows in the afternoon sun, one could almost imagine golden palaces rising from its center, spires glittering under the Saharan heat, canals of aquamarine water cutting perfect circles around Central Temple. Anthropologists noted the presence of ancient stone tools, pottery shards, and remnants of pastoral settlements around the periphery, signs that humans had lived here tens of thousands of years ago, long before written history. Whether or not they were Atlanteans, the layers of civilization spoke of continuity, of human ingenuity and resilience in the face of nature's relentless forces. In the modern living rooms of the world, Atlantis is transformed once more, entering a digital consciousness. Through augmented reality apps, ordinary people can now dive, alongside James Cameron's submersibles, mapping Mediterranean calderas, examining 3D scans of Acroteri's frescoes, and reconstructing ancient cities from fragments of pottery, walls, and ash. Social media platforms host live debates, with viewers posting annotated screenshots, sharing theories, and connecting the Minoan eruption to flood myths across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Each new post becomes part of a growing, collective memory, a digital Atlantis where every user is both explorer and historian. Imagine a child sitting cross-legged on a soft carpet, tablet balanced on knees, headphones enclosing their ears in a world of calm narration. The screen glows in the dim room, showing the turquoise waves parting over sunken streets, tiny submersibles hovering over blocks of stone. Outside, the wind rustles leaves, a cat curls against the windowsill, and the child blinks slowly, caught between wonder and sleep. Atlantis drifts closer, not as a literal place, but as an experience, a story made real through imagination, curiosity, and the quiet magic of human thought. In 2026, archaeologists studying the Black Sea deltas revisited theories of sunken civilizations beneath its dark waters. The region, isolated for millennia, contains evidence of Neolithic settlements submerged as the Ice Age glaciers receded and waters rose. Researchers noted that early villagers had constructed circular dwellings, raised pathways, and rudimentary harbors, which now sit 200 meters below the surface, preserved in an oxygen-poor environment. The patterns are not Atlantean, not in any direct sense, yet they echo Plato's descriptions: circular cities, water flowing around human habitation, societies built in harmony with both land and sea. Science, in this instance, intersects with myth in quiet, almost imperceptible ways, suggesting that Atlantis was never one place, but a concept reflected wherever humans lived close to water and dreamed of perfection. Cultural interpretations have continued to flourish alongside scientific investigation. In Japan, artists have rendered Atlantis as floating gardens, delicate wooden bridges arching over canals, cranes and koi moving through golden pools, a land of harmony and balance. In Brazil, painters depict Atlantis merging with the Amazon, rivers threading through circular cities of thatch and stone, blending Minoan, African, and indigenous influences. Writers in Canada and Ireland imagine Celtic Atlantis, with stone circles glowing under aurora-lit skies, people practicing ancient crafts in towns built upon ring-shaped foundations. These visions, while not archaeological evidence, keep the essence of Atlantis alive, an ideal, a dream, a gentle reminder that civilization is fragile, but imagination is endless. Even technology participates in this myth-making. Artificial intelligence algorithms, trained on Plato's text, archaeological records, satellite imagery, and even fan fiction, generate ever more detailed reconstructions of Atlantis. Some are hyper-realistic, glistening temples with columns of orichalcum, waves washing over sunken streets, markets filled with ancient goods. Others are abstract, suggesting Atlantis as a concept, a network of concentric rings, nodes of knowledge, and circles of harmony spread across land, sea, and sky. These renderings circulate on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, sparking billions of engagements, debates, and collaborative storytelling. Children and adults alike add to the digital collective memory, co-creating a dreamscape that belongs to everyone. Let yourself drift further into this digital Atlantis. A young historian scrolls through forums late at night, typing slowly, eyes heavy with fatigue, yet bright with curiosity. The room is dark except for the screen's glow, papers scattered across the desk, maps tacked to the wall. Outside, the city hums with life, car lights tracing paths across the streets, distant music floating in the air. Within the screen, waves lap over stone streets, fish dart through sunken plazas, temples glimmer faintly in the dim light of imagined suns. Sleep hovers just at the edges of consciousness, ready to pull the historian into dreams where Atlantis exists, whole and perfect, as it has never existed in reality. Meanwhile, oceanographers continue to explore the deep. In 2027, the Mariana Trench becomes a site of curiosity, not because Plato mentioned it, but because the idea of lost worlds beneath the waves resonates in every human heart. Autonomous drones capture images of hydrothermal vents, unique life forms, and collapsed geological formations, all glowing under artificial lights. The images remind scientists and laypeople alike that the ocean itself is the closest thing we have to the unknown Atlantis, a realm where life, energy, and possibility coexist beyond human comprehension. One might imagine Atlantis here, not as a city, but as a network of natural wonders, deep-sea temples built by tectonics and currents, a world that teaches humility and reverence for forces larger than ourselves. Philosophers have also returned to the theme, exploring Atlantis as a metaphor for society's ambitions and failings. In 2028, a series of essays published in global journals meditates on Atlantis as a warning for the Anthropocene, the era of humans as geological agents. Rising sea levels, resource depletion, and climate crises are interpreted through the lens of Atlantis, the ancient utopia that fell not because of the ocean, but because of hubris, greed, and disconnection from natural balance. Educators use the legend in classrooms worldwide, asking students to reflect on justice, moderation, and community. In doing so, Atlantis moves from myth to moral compass, teaching lessons Plato's students might have understood under olive trees centuries ago. Consider a classroom in Norway, warm from heating, snow blanketing the streets outside. Children lean over maps and screens, tracing the routes of ancient waves, imagining the Minoan eruption, and pondering modern floods. A teacher speaks softly, narrating Plato's tale while students close their eyes, visualizing concentric rings of water and land, temples gleaming with gold, the sea rising quietly, inexorably. The room is still, except for whispered questions and soft breaths, as young minds meet the timeless story, learning not only history, but empathy, curiosity, and imagination. In literature and film, Atlantis continues to evolve. Novels published in 2029 reimagine it as a society that never fell, hidden beneath the Arctic ice, adapting to changing climates with sustainable energy drawn from natural crystals, a fusion of science and magic. Documentaries blend drone footage from underwater trenches with CGI reconstructions of imagined cities, accompanied by meditative narration and ambient soundscapes. Video games allow players to explore Atlantean ruins interactively, solving puzzles, navigating concentric streets, and uncovering artifacts while learning about Bronze Age civilizations, geology, and oceanography. Atlantis, in these forms, is a living myth, constantly renewed through creativity and technology. Even in personal reflection, Atlantis remains. In journals and diaries, people write of dreams where they wander sunken streets, listen to the whispers of water, or glide through hallways lined with golden light. Meditation practices incorporate Atlantean imagery, guiding the mind to peaceful harmony, moral reflection, and compassion. For some, Atlantis is internal, a utopia within the human spirit, as much about the potential for justice, wisdom, and balance as about lost cities or archaeological traces. And yet, the story is never complete. Every discovery, every theory, every digital reconstruction adds another layer, another ripple to the ever-expanding ocean of Atlantis. It is not a single place, nor a single time, but an evolving narrative, a mirror reflecting humanity's curiosity, our fears, our hopes. Plato's unfinished dialogue continues to resonate, inviting each generation to imagine, explore, and dream. Breathe slowly. Let the rhythm of the waves guide your thoughts. Picture the ocean stretching endlessly, the sunlight fracturing on its surface, casting patterns that dance across invisible streets below. Sense the quiet pulse of history, science, myth, and imagination merging into one gentle current. Atlantis drifts within it, timeless, eternal, a story that exists wherever humans wonder, dream, and hope. And the night deepens. The waves swell softly, carrying whispers of temples, streets, and oceans, of civilizations remembered and imagined. Rest now, if you will. Close your eyes. Atlantis waits, eternal, gentle, and always just beyond the horizon, in memory, in dream, and in every story yet to be told. And so the ocean continues to murmur, carrying echoes of what was, what might have been, and what could yet exist. Atlantis is no longer just a story of sunken streets and golden temples. It is a living reflection of humanity's curiosity, a lens through which we view ourselves, our ambitions, our mistakes, our dreams. Each ripple across the sea carries a fragment of memory, fact, speculation, and imagination, blending into a tide that stretches from ancient Athens to the digital screens of the modern world. In the late 2020s, as climate change accelerates and seas creep higher along coasts worldwide, the Atlantis metaphor becomes strikingly literal. Rising waters threaten heritage sites in Venice, Alexandria, Miami, and Jakarta. Scientists and urban planners consult the lessons of Plato's tale, considering human hubris, urban expansion, and the delicate balance between society and nature. Papers are published drawing parallels. Ancient civilizations were lost in part to earthquakes, floods, and environmental mismanagement. Could we be repeating the mistakes of Atlantis? Could our sprawling cities, built upon deltas and lowlands, fall to forces we cannot control? The question is both chilling and meditative, an invitation to reflection rather than fear. Imagine a quiet evening in New Orleans, where a researcher sits in a home office overlooking the Mississippi Delta. Outside, the sunset glows over the water, its reflection fragmented by gentle waves. On the desk, maps of levees, historical flooding, and projected sea levels lie side by side with open books on Plato, Minoan civilization, and hydrogeology. The researcher traces the projected rise of the sea with a finger, contemplating Atlantis, Thera, and the lessons embedded in every story of hubris and loss. The air is still, except for the soft hum of a fan, a reminder that we are not merely observers of history, but participants in its unfolding. The digital age has amplified these contemplations. Global networks connect enthusiasts, scholars, and explorers in unprecedented ways. Crowdsourced research platforms allow citizen scientists to analyze sonar scans, satellite imagery, and geological data, producing patterns that professional teams might have missed. In 2029, an international collaborative project named Atlantean Horizons encouraged volunteers to trace underwater formations, map river deltas, and compare archaeological layers across continents. Schools, museums, and hobbyists participate, creating a vast, interconnected network of inquiry. Social media is alive with live-stream dives, interactive 3D models, and virtual reality simulations of sunken cities. People who may never touch the ocean physically can now feel its depths, glide over stone roads, and imagine Atlantis in every wave, every trench, every shadowed abyss. A small village in Morocco offers a scene of quiet wonder. Children gather in a sun-drenched courtyard, tablets balanced on knees, headphones on, as a VR simulation shows concentric rings of a vanished city, canals and bridges stretching outward from a gleaming central temple. An elder in the village, seated on a carved wooden chair, tells stories of Thera, Minoan sailors, and the ancient seas, blending local myths with Plato's text. The children watch, wide-eyed, caught between history, imagination, and the digital reconstruction before them. For them, Atlantis is not merely a legend. It is a tool for learning about morality, engineering, environment, and the delicate interplay between human ambition and natural forces. The scientific exploration of Atlantis deepens as well. In 2030, AI-driven ocean drones are deployed in uncharted regions of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Mediterranean. These machines carry LiDAR sensors, sonar arrays, and 3D mapping cameras, transmitting enormous volumes of data to analysis centers around the world. Algorithms identify anomalies, circular depressions, unexpected straight lines, and patterns in sediment deposition that hint at human activity. Each anomaly is scrutinized by a combination of marine archaeologists, geologists, and historians, resulting in a new approach to myth and evidence. While no definitive Atlantis has been found, the process itself is revelatory. It teaches us about ocean currents, tectonic shifts, ancient shorelines, and early civilizations we might have otherwise overlooked. Picture a deep-sea lab in the Mediterranean, where a team of researchers monitors live feeds from multiple submersibles. The water outside is cold and dark, yet the digital images on the screens glow like sunlit streets underwater. Coral begins to form over ancient stone formations. Small fish weave through arches of what may once have been walls. Sediment shifts slowly over centuries-old debris. A scientist notes a pattern in the stone's arrangement. A circle, perhaps a foundation, perhaps nothing more than natural erosion. But in that instant, imagination and curiosity converge. Atlantis exists in that room, not as physical ruins, but as possibility itself. The legend continues in education, literature, and art. Textbooks now include chapters on how myths like Atlantis inform archaeology, oceanography, and ethics. Students trace routes of Bronze Age trade, the impact of volcanic eruptions, and the cultural diffusion that connects ancient Egypt, Crete, and the Americas. Poets and novelists reimagine Atlantis in futuristic landscapes, cities floating on solar-powered platforms, circular utopias thriving amid climate adversity, societies harmonizing technology, philosophy, and the environment. Art installations around the world reconstruct Atlantean streets and museums, allowing visitors to walk through concentric rings of light and water, immersing themselves in sensory reflections of an imagined past. Meanwhile, personal reflection has embraced Atlantis in profound ways. Meditation apps guide users through visualizations of concentric cities, golden temples, and calm seas. Psychologists note that imagining Atlantis promotes focus, empathy, and creativity. People visualize Atlantis when considering moral decisions, environmental stewardship, or community harmony. The legend has become both story and tool, myth and mirror, a quiet reminder that civilizations, like waves, rise and fall, but that human imagination is infinite, able to reconstruct, reimagine, and redeem what is lost. In the 2030s, genetic studies expand understanding of population movements that may have inspired parts of the myth. Ancient DNA from Mediterranean, North African, and Atlantic sites is analyzed to track migrations, trade, and interactions across millennia. Evidence emerges that links coastal communities disrupted by rising seas to settlements further inland, echoing the displacement and diaspora described in Atlantean legends. The findings suggest that Plato's story, though mythic, is grounded in a profound understanding of human resilience and adaptation. It is less about gold and orichalcum, more about society, memory, and survival. Let us pause and drift. Picture a calm evening along a rocky Atlantic cliff. Waves lap softly against the stones. A young scholar sits cross-legged, eyes closed, headphones on, listening to a recording of the sea interspersed with Plato's words. The wind carries salt and damp earth. Thoughts of Atlantis, Thera, Bimini, the Rickhat structure, hover, neither urgent nor distant. Sleep approaches like a gentle tide, carrying with it images of sunken temples, circular cities, and the quiet rhythm of water against stone. Digital art and storytelling in the same era continue to push the legend further. AI-generated illustrations portray Atlantean markets bustling with life, circular aqueducts reflecting sunlight, temples shimmering with the mythical orichalcum. Virtual reality experiences allow users to walk the streets of the imagined city, glide over canals, and witness ceremonies that blend Bronze Age rituals with speculative, dreamlike elements. These recreations encourage empathy and exploration, reminding us that Atlantis is not only a story of loss, but also of human aspiration, ingenuity, and creativity. The world watches the oceans differently now, attuned to the subtleties of waves, currents, and tides. Scientists warn of potential floods, but citizens imagine Atlantis as a parable, a civilization lost not merely to water, but to pride, carelessness, and disregard for balance. Coastal planners, engineers, and policymakers adopt Atlantean thinking in subtle ways. Sustainable cities, resilient infrastructure, and attention to environmental harmony. Atlantis, once myth, becomes a quiet teacher of prudence and stewardship. Even in entertainment, Atlantis thrives as metaphor and exploration. Films released in 2035 explore parallel narratives. A child in Venice navigates rising canals while dreaming of Atlantean streets. A diver explores Mediterranean ruins while contemplating the fragility of human endeavor. An AI reconstructs lost cities for historians. Video games simulate underwater ecosystems, blending archaeology, environmental management, and mythic storytelling, allowing players to understand both history and imagination. Each iteration is a meditation, a reflection, and a bridge between fact and story. And yet, no single version of Atlantis is ever final. It exists in 1,000 forms simultaneously: a Bronze Age city, a Minoan town, a North Atlantic island, a Saharan ring of stone, a submerged delta, a VR simulation, a thought experiment, a meditation exercise, a moral lesson. Each generation adds layers, reinterprets the myth, blends technology with history, and finds new ways to connect with the idea of lost perfection. Atlantis, in this sense, is not merely a story. It is an evolving consciousness, a shared dream of humanity itself. Breathe in slowly. Feel the pulse of the ocean, the rhythm of history, the gentle pull of imagination. Visualize the concentric rings of Atlantean cities, stone streets, canals, temples, markets, plazas, both real and imagined, both ancient and futuristic, drifting beneath waves of water, waves of time, waves of thought. Sense the legacy. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, yet stories endure, echoing softly in every heart that listens, every mind that wonders, every soul that dreams. Rest now. Let your mind drift across oceans, through centuries, across continents, through the very fabric of imagination. Atlantis waits, eternal and gentle, not beneath the waves alone, but within every story told, every thought pondered, and every dream imagined. In this quiet reflection, the tale of Atlantis reaches its final, serene form, a symbol of what we have lost, what we might regain, and the infinite possibilities carried by the human spirit. The night is still, the ocean is calm, the legends remain, soft as lullabies. Atlantis is everywhere, nowhere, within and without, a gentle reminder that even in loss, beauty, wisdom, and wonder endure.